Now, many of you know him already. If you're just new to our church, we have a team teaching philosophy, which means that we believe that the church is to be built around Jesus Christ and not just one speaker. Often it happens the lead pastor. And so I'm not the only person that speaks here. Mike is our pastor of high school ministries. He's not speaking today just because it's a long holiday, and that's when we allow the youth pastors to speak. Rather, he is part of our teaching team.
It's low pressure then.
It's a little pressure,
no one's
though.
here. It's nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are watching online. I would just let you know that.
Okay.
And we believe this is important. And so also, as we have a lot of kids in the room, as well as some of that, I guarantee you he's going to engage you in ways different than I ever could have thought of today. So how's that for a setup?
Great.
Yeah, all right, there you go.
So I don't know if what black cats I've wandered by lately or what ladders I've unintentionally walked under, but my family has been on a little bit of a bad luck streak over the past couple of weeks, okay? In fact, in the past 2 weekends, not this weekend, but the 2 that have preceded it, we have had 2 major, 10-year family expenses, those kinds of items have gone kaput on us in the past 2 weekends. So 2 weekends ago, I took the van in for inspection, and it bombed. Our minivan just absolutely bombed inspection to the point where, you guys know where this is going, it doesn't make any sense to pour that amount of money into this older vehicle. We should somehow in America, it makes more sense to spend tens of thousands of dollars rather than spending a couple $1,000s. And so, kind of unexpectedly, Anna and I wound up purchasing a new minivan, which is in some ways a blessing because new things are cool and shiny and all of that, but now our children, for the rest of their childhood, will only be wearing potato sacks, and the food that our children eat will be potatoes. And so, there's just positives and negatives to it. So we replaced our family car 2 weekends ago. And then last weekend, I'm folding laundry, okay? I'm folding laundry, in the laundry room, folding laundry. And one of my kids comes in and says, "Kitchen table's broken." I said, "What do you mean it's broken?" It broke. It just broke. It just, sometimes things just break and it just broke. So I go out there and the table is snapped, right? This is the leg on the table is snapped, and let me tell you, when I walked out of the laundry room and I saw that the table leg on the kitchen table was snapped, I was absolutely livid. I was furious. I was so mad. I was mad because it was expensive. I just saw the dollar signs, okay? I knew this was gonna be, I was mad because we just spent tens of thousands of dollars last weekend, and now we're gonna spend, this is easily gonna be 4 digits to get a whole new set of dining, right? And then, but I was mad because it didn't have to happen. You know what I mean? It was an accident. We got to the bottom of what happened. Tables don't just break. You guys know that, right? But we got to the bottom of what happened. It was an accident, but it was avoidable, right? It was avoidable, and I was just like, oh, this didn't have to happen. And if you are a parent, then you know that when someone breaks something in your house that's expensive and you're angry about it, that anger is directional, right? It's pointed, right? It is aimed at someone. And this was the case in mine. And so fire and brimstone rain from my lips for about 20 seconds, and then I go back into the laundry room to cool off, okay? And as I'm sitting there, I'm folding laundry, I start reflecting on everything that this kitchen table has made it through over roughly the past decade. This kitchen table made it through 3 different toddlers, so many painting sessions. When kids have a painting session on a kitchen table, at least 7% of that paint isn't going on the paper. You know what I mean? It's going on the table and it's never coming off. So many, hundreds upon hundreds of family meals where more food made it onto the table than into a child's mouth. This table made it through, and I also remembered that something this kitchen table had survived was a very similar type of crack on a different table leg way back when. Because I remembered that when Anna and I first purchased this kitchen table, I decided, you put the table on the ground and you start adding all the legs and all the things to it, and it's upside down, and then you have to flip the table. Well, I was 22. So obviously my strength is unlimited at 22 years old. I mean, look at me, I'm huge. And so I thought to myself, flip this table. And I tried to, I pick it, and then humility happened. And as the table comes fumbling down and crack, the table leg on the opposite side, right, cracked. And thank goodness for wood glue. But it was this reminder to me that my kid wasn't the first one to break this table. I was. And so suddenly, I wasn't so mad anymore. I walked out of the laundry room and I told my kids that story. I told them that story so that they would know that despite the fact that Dad passionately pushes them toward making wise decisions and avoiding expensive mistakes, I wanted them to know that Dad makes mistakes too. Human beings, we are so messy, aren't we? We are so it's easy to forget sometimes. It's easy to forget in a moment of passion, in a moment of anger, in a moment of, we are so messy. We are crazy, crazy flawed. In fact, some of y'all, most of us, we're downright cancelable, truth be told. Like, if the worst moments of your present or the worst moments of your past were laid bare before your spiritual community, I mean, we'd like to think, now listen, this is a good church, and we'd like to think that, oh, there's going to be grace. But what feels most true is that you would be excommunicated on the spot. And I don't even know if that's something our church does, right? But you would just immediately shunned by family, by pastors, by friends. If people knew the worst things that you've ever done in secret, then you're just pretty sure you'd be done. You'd be canceled on the spot. We are just a walking contradiction sometimes. In fact, I don't think it would be, I don't know if you ever thought of it this way, but for the vast majority of us in the room, we try to put more good out into the world than actually exists within us. Right? That's kind of our goal. We walk around in life, or we're attempting to put more good into the world than actually exists within us. This is why we get angry at children for making unwise decisions and breaking expensive furniture when we do that ourselves sometimes. This is why you passionately, you demand justice in our nation. You demand justice, you demand peace in our nation, and you don't even pursue peace in your marriage. You don't even pursue justice in your marriage, right? This is why you command that everyone in the world follow Jesus when you're barely following Jesus yourself. We put out more, this is just a universal truth. We put out more good, we try to put out more good into the world than actually exists within us. And because that's true, for most of us, whether we've thought of it in that framework or not, most of us wind up asking ourselves a question at some point in our lives. We see how messy we are. We see that we are a walking contradiction. We see how many mistakes we make and how what we believe doesn't always seem to line up with how we behave. And so we ask a question. And your answer to this question will determine a lot over the course of your lifetime in terms of your faith and your walk with Jesus. And the question we ask is this: despite the fact that I'm still messy, can I still be useful to God? And your answer to that question, not your theological answer, not the one that you learned in Sunday school, but what feels most true to you when it comes to answering that question will determine a ton about what you do or don't do to advance God's kingdom over the course of your lifetime. So, if you are walking in this morning and you are conflicted or you are feeling heavy about the weight of your mistakes, if you are walking in this morning and you're not sure how to be today before God in light of what you did last night, if you're walking in today thinking that it's probably the case that your mistakes and your flaws are going to hold you back from ever doing anything of significance in God's kingdom, then I hope this message is helpful. So if you have a Bible, you can turn over to Joshua chapter 2. That's where we're headed, is Joshua chapter 2. We are in the last week of this series on the legends of our faith, and we're talking about, and while the person that we're talking about, they are mentioned in Hebrews 11:31, we're actually going to jump straight to Joshua chapter 2, because when we talk about the story of Rahab, I think there's a lot to explore, and there's a lot of really good stuff for those of us who are feeling like our messiness is going to prevent us from ever doing anything of use for the sake of God's kingdom. I think Rahab's story is going to have a lot for us, because here's the thing, before we jump in, I just want to give you some context, okay? We're not going to read all the nitty-gritty details, but it would suffice to say that Rahab wasn't actually even, she's like a legend of faith, Rahab wasn't even that good a person when she did the thing that we call her a legend of the faith for. Rahab wasn't even that good of a person. Like, Rahab was messy. Rahab made poor life choices, okay? Rahab did things that would get her canceled in every church in America. Like, Rahab was, in fact, Rahab, this hero of the Jewish faith, she wasn't even Jewish. She wasn't even an Israelite. That's really rare for someone who's considered a legend of the faith, right? In fact, Rahab lived, where Rahab was from, she lived in the city of Jericho. And if you're a kid in the room, you're a student in the room, right? You that name, Jericho. Yeah, Jericho. That's the one where the Israelites went and they walked around the walls of the city a bunch of times, and then trumpets happened or something like that, and the walls came tumbling down, right? That's Jericho. Crazy stuff, right? Before that happened, Jericho was a city that Rahab lived in. And in fact, if it weren't for Rahab, then the story about Jericho would not have happened. And so we're going to jump in and we're going to explore Rahab's story. And again, if you are in the room and you are feeling like you are just too much of a hot mess for God to be able to use you in this life, then I hope that Rahab's story is encouraging. So here's the deal, okay? Let me set it up for you. Rahab, the reason that we know this legend of the faith is because Rahab interacted with two Israelite spies. And the spies had come from the Israelite camp. And they came so that they could scout out the city of Jericho and figure out what its weaknesses were so that they could come in and take over the city and advance God's kingdom. And for one night, the spies of Israelites stayed at Rahab's house. And we're going to discover what happened next in Joshua chapter 2, starting in verse 2. But someone told the king of Jericho, "Hey, boss, some Israelites have come here to spy out the land." So the king of Jericho sent orders to Rahab. "Bring out the men who have come into your house, Rahab, for they have come here to spy out the whole land." And Rahab had hidden the two men, but she replied, Yeah, the men were here earlier, but I didn't know what you know that's how Rahab sounded too. But I didn't know where they was from. They left the town at dusk as the gates was about to close. I don't know where they went, but if you hurry, you might be able to catch up with them. Actually, she had taken the spies up to the roof, and she had hidden them beneath the bundles of flax she had laid out. Hold on. Did Rahab just lie? Like, Rahab just straight up, yep, Rahab just lied. Straight up, that's what happened, okay? Like, they were like, hey, the spies, they're here, right? And she was like, I don't know. Like, what? How is it? So it's confusing. Like, did Rahab do a good thing? Or did she do a bad thing? Did she do a bad thing for God? Does that make it good? Or is it bad because God hates bad things? What is happening here, right? Let's trying to figure it out. So in fact, here's the question that I ask, right? Because I like to read the Bible like a skeptic sometimes, okay? So I'm going to put my skeptic hat on. Why does the Bible have Rahab as a hero of the faith for lying? I can lie. You know what I mean? Put me in there. I've told a few. Oh, Rahab gets all the credit for lying. Right? I don't understand. Why are we giving out senior superlatives for most deceitful? I don't understand what's happening here, right? Rahab is messy. She's messy. But There's more to the story. Verse 7. So the king's men went looking for the spies along the road leading to the shallow crossings of the Jordan River. And as soon as the king's men had left, the gate of Jericho was shut. And before the spies went to sleep that night, Rahab went up on the roof to talk to them. I know the Lord has given you this land, she told them. We're all afraid of you. Everyone in the land is living in terror. For we have heard how the Lord made a dry path for y'all through the Red Sea when you left Egypt. And we know what you did to Sihon and Og, the two Amorite kings east of the Jordan River, whose people you completely destroyed. No wonder our hearts have melted in fear. No one has the courage to fight after hearing such things. For the Lord your God is the supreme God of all the heavens above and the earth below. And I think this is actually super helpful. What we just read from Rahab, I think it's actually really helpful because it gives us context into like what's going on in Rahab's mind. It gives us context into why Rahab let these two Israelite spies into her house in the first place, why she helped them. She helped them because while Rahab's theology wasn't totally on point, and while Rahab wasn't exactly living, the most Jesus-y lifestyle all the time, Rahab knew a couple things about God. She had learned a few things about God. She knew that the Israelite God was the God, and that led her to a place where she wanted to be, wherever that God is, wherever his people are. She wanted to be part of that. Whatever's going on over there, and I think here's the key. Rahab wanted to align herself with God and his kingdom in as much as she knew how to. And I think I think the fact that was acceptable to God, I think that's an incredibly important thing for us to lock into here, and more importantly, to lock into here. That Rahab didn't have excellent theology, and Rahab still lived a life of moral questionability, right? The job that she had was a little sketchy, but despite that fact, Rahab knew a little something about God, and what she knew about God led her to action on behalf of that God, even if she did so imperfectly. And when you consider Rahab's context, and you really consider her to be a full person, right? Like, you can kind of appreciate why she's so deeply revered and respected in the Bible, because Rahab, like, lived in Jericho. She grew up in Jericho, and then she turned on her people. I would imagine that Rahab had some trauma that had come out of the city of Jericho. I would imagine that Rahab had some poor experiences that had happened in the city of Jericho. I would imagine that there were a few wives in the city of Jericho who had beef with Rahab. I would imagine not everything about the city of Jericho was home sweet home to Rahab, but home is home, people. Home is still home. And for Rahab to turn on her people suggests that there was something worth pursuing. There was something worth pursuing that she had discovered. In as much as she knew about the God of the universe, she was discovered he was worth pursuing and forsaking everything and everybody else. And that's interesting. That's significant. That starts to explain why Rahab has the position of reverence that she has. She wanted to align herself with God and with his people. Verse 12, now swear to me by the Lord, spies, that you will be kind to me and my family since I've helped you. Give me some kind of guarantee that when Jericho's conquered, you're going to let me live along with my father, my mother, my brothers, Vinny, Vincent, and Vincenzo, and my sisters, and all their families. And the spy said, we offer our own lives as a guarantee for your safety. The men agreed. If you don't betray us, we'll keep our promise and be kind to you when the Lord gives us the land. And so this is secret agent stuff, right? This is like backdoor deals and the handshakes and spies and double crossings. Like I'm thankful that we have the music backing. I feel like I'm watching a movie. It's good stuff. Why has a movie not been made about, anyways, okay. Verse 15, then Since Rahab's house was built into the town wall, she let the spies down by a rope through the window. Escape to the hill country, she told them. They were like, Rahab, shh, hush, this is like, hide there for 3 days from the men. She just screamed louder. Hide there for 3 days from the men searching for you. And then when they've returned, you can go on your way. And before they left, the men told her, we will be bound by the oath we've taken only if you follow these instructions. When we come into the land, you must leave this scarlet rope hanging from the window through which you let us down, and all your family members, your mother, your father, your brothers, Vinny, Vincent, and Vincenzo, and all of your relatives must be here inside the house. And if they go out into the street and are killed, that's not our problem. But if anyone lays a hand on people inside this house, then we will accept the responsibility for their death. And if you betray us, however, we are not bound by this oath in any way. I accept your terms, she replied. And then she sent them on their way, leaving the scarlet rope hanging from the window. And then Rahab turned to camera and she said, call me Hab. Rahab. Give it up for the band, y'all. Give it up for the band. All right, listen, we don't have time to talk about the scarlet rope thing, but I will just let me just hang there for just a quick second. I really think it's interesting that, Rahab, in order to guarantee her family's safety inside of her home, she had to hang a blood-colored scarlet rope outside of the window, and that would be a sign to the people who were coming in to deliver death to that area. It would be a sign to just go ahead and pass over this house. I just think that's really interesting in light of Israelite history, but we don't have time to get into it. But anyways, here's what we need to realize about Rahab, okay? Rahab is a legend of the faith, but Rahab was not a spiritually mature person. She was not. Now look, we don't have a lot of Rahab's story after this. I'm sure she grew in her faith. I'm sure she became, lifestyle change, all of that. But when the thing happened that made Rahab a legend, when that happened, she wasn't spiritually mature. She's perhaps the most underqualified hero of the faith of all of the people that we've talked about. But what she did, while Rahab may not have known everything about God, may not have understood everything about living a lifestyle for God, she didn't get all the Old Testament laws, she didn't know all that, and she definitely wasn't ceremonial and clean, right? She didn't know all that stuff. Okay, she didn't have all the fancy bells and whistles of it. But what Rahab did have was some faith. She had some understanding of who God was. And what understanding she did have led her to legitimate action that advanced God's kingdom. In that, not the fact that she lied, but because of her faith that moved her to action, that is why Rahab is honored as a legend of the faith. In fact, here's the way I want to put it, okay? Here's the way I want to put it. Rahab meshed her unique position and opportunity with her imperfect commitment to God. She meshed her unique position and her opportunity with her imperfect commitment to God. And when she did that, it changed the course of history for God's people, and it advanced the kingdom. And I would love it if we had that story. But unfortunately, for a lot of us, that ain't our story. For a lot of us, we've got some stuff that's getting in the way of us advancing God's kingdom. For some of us, it's the unique position thing. We don't appreciate our unique position. We are so hung up, for some of you, you are so hung up on the opportunity the thing that's down the road, the next thing. You are so busy chasing and thirsting after the next big thing that you don't appreciate the unique position God has you in right here, right now. When you consider Rahab's context, okay? Rahab lived on the outskirts of town. She lived on the city wall. Given her position in society, given her job, given who Rahab was, there is a very little chance that this was one of the nice homes in town. You know what I mean? Rahab could have, but It was a unique position because she was on the town wall. And when the time came, she appreciated her unique position and leveraged it to advance God's kingdom. And some of you, you are so hung up. You're too busy whining to appreciate the unique position that God has put you in. Some of you are so busy whining that you didn't get cast as the lead in the school play that you are completely ignoring, you are totally closed off to what God might be trying to do in you and through you to advance his kingdom because you have freedom and you're not bogged down with the responsibilities of being a lead in the school play. So ask yourself the question, what could God do in me and through me for the rest of this cast because I'm an alternate, because I'm in the cast but don't have the crazy responsibilities of being a lead? How can I affect change within this cast? Some of you are so busy whining about not getting the promotion that you want, that next position, that you're completely ignoring the unique opportunity God has you in right now. What if the fact that you're not the boss means that you can have more influence, not less, among your current coworkers? What if there are people's stories that right now you have the time to to interact with their stories on when you're at lunch or when you're at after the meeting, when you're just whatever, water cooler, right? Like you have the time, you have the flexibility to interact with them and engage with their story in a way that you might not be able to do if there was a solid glass wall. This is a nice office, a solid glass wall separating you and the rest of the bullpen. You feel me? Some of you are so busy whining about the position of still being single that you're not appreciating what God could do through your unique position of being single, that you have the freedom to move about the cabin and affect change in communities and in places of need. Some of you are too busy whining about the unique position of being married that you don't appreciate what God could do in and through you in your family and in your neighborhood. Like God has us in a unique position, so don't underappreciate it. But for some of us, it's not about the position, it's about the opportunity. Some of us are so bogged down with life. We're too bogged down. We're not in tune enough with God's Spirit living within us to recognize the opportunities that God puts in front of us, right? Like Rahab wasn't perfect. She was not perfect by any stretch, but she recognized the opportunity that was in front of her, and it would have been easy for her to ignore it. Can you imagine if Rahab, she's sitting in her living room and she hears knock, knock, knock on the door, and it's been a long day at work. She answers the door, cracks it open for safety reasons. She cracks it open. She sees that it's two men, and she just goes, "Oh, no, thanks. I've had enough of men for one day," right? Like that would be understandable if Rahab had that idea, right? Yeah, no, thanks, gents. We're closed, right? Like that would have been understandable. But for some reason, Rahab was clear enough up here and in here to recognize the opportunity that God was presenting to her, to recognize that these two dudes were different than the dudes that she was used to dealing with. And some of you you're too clogged up, you're too bogged down in here and up here to see the subtle opportunities that God presents you with every day to advance his kingdom. The cashier at the grocery store, the lonely kid sitting by themselves on the playground, right? These unique opportunities that God presents us with to advance the kingdom, but you've got to be clear enough up here and in here because God isn't always screaming like Rahab. When God speaks and presents us with opportunities, oftentimes it comes in the form of a whisper. It's more subtle, so you're going to have to recognize and slow down so you can recognize the opportunity. But then for some of us, it's not about the position and it's not about the opportunity. It's what's holding us back from advancing God's kingdom is the fact that we are so deeply imperfect. It's the fact that the grace of God that was present in Rahab's story, we haven't appreciated and we haven't embraced the fact that grace is even more so available to us now in Christ Jesus. We wouldn't say this out loud because we know it's bad theology. We wouldn't say it out loud. But what feels most true to us is that God can't use us because we're too messed up. We're too broken. And so what's holding you back from advancing God's kingdom is that you aren't embracing his grace. You're letting your sin issues, you're letting your flaws hold you back as if what Jesus did on the cross isn't sufficient. And it is. It is sufficient. It's sufficient. Not only is it sufficient, but God knew before he sent Jesus to die for you, he knew that you were going to be a sinner. He knew that you were going to have some issues. He knew that you were going to be a walking contradiction sometimes. And still, he sent Jesus to die for you and for me so that he could use us despite our brokenness to do incredible things that advance his kingdom. So if there's one thing that we can learn from Rahab's story, it's this, and this is the point. It's that God sees beyond your mess. Amen. He sees your mess. He doesn't ignore your mess. In fact, your mess is such a big deal that he had to send his son to die for it. But he sees beyond it. He doesn't stop at the surface. He doesn't wait right there and oh no, thank you. That's no, like he dives below, he sees your heart, and he honors what you're after. He honors what you're after the way he honored what Rahab was after, even though she executed it so imperfectly. And I just wonder what kind of change we could affect in the world around us if we embrace that kind of faith paradigm. If we stopped letting our woundedness be what colors the way we see the world, if we stopped letting our past color the way we see the world, if we stopped letting what our dad said to us 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago that hurt us and made us feel like we were nothing, if we stopped letting that color the way we see the world, instead let the gospel of Jesus Christ color the way that we see the world so that we can fully embrace grace and walk in the path that God has laid out for us. And here's the thing, this isn't just about you. The reason this matters so much is because it's not just about you. What Rahab did was not just about her. All of Israelite history was changed because of what Rahab did, because even despite the fact that she didn't even really know that God was a God of grace, she had already embraced and hoped that he was. And so how much more so, for those of us who know that our God is a God of grace, how much more so ought we to be people who embrace that grace and allow it to color the way that we see everything so that we can go forth and advance God's kingdom. So please, don't stay stagnant. Don't sit there in your mess, because God is a God of grace, and through that grace, he sees past and beyond our mess, and he comes inside of us and finds what's going on in the core of who we are, and through that, by getting into the nitty-gritty of who we are, he changes us. They call that transformation, and it's available to you in Jesus Christ, but you will never, ever get there if you really believe deep down in your heart that God can't see beyond your mess. Let me pray for us. God, thank you for being a God of second chances. Thank you for being a God who sees beyond our mess. I know I'm messy. I know a lot of people in the room are. A lot of people watching online are. And my prayer, Lord, my prayer is that you wouldn't leave us there. You wouldn't leave us in our mess forever. That your grace would move us somewhere. And that the somewhere your grace moves us toward is becoming more like Jesus. It's in his name I pray. Amen.